It's that time of year again. Time to look back on the year that was and ask that perennial question, what was the best music of the past 12 months? My countdown of the best albums of 2021 is coming up next on Track by Track. Hey everybody, my name's Kyle and this is Track by Track, music reviews, news, and commentary. Thanks for tuning in today, and if this is your first time here, please take a second to click subscribe so that you won't miss future reviews and more. 2021 was not the year in music that I was expecting. Honestly, it probably wasn't the year in music anyone was expecting, what with the lingering effects of the pandemic and all. But for me, what was most surprising was the acts that did or did not deliver some of my favorite albums of the year. I had high hopes for new music from some of my favorite artists in 2021, and I found myself mildly disappointed. Now, I don't want that to sound harsh. I actually did enjoy the new albums from Courtney Barnett, Ryan Adams, Bare Naked Ladies, Robert Plant and Alison Krauss, Sting, and the long-awaited new album from Liz Phair. They were all pretty good. But that's about it. None of those artists landed in my top 10 for 2021, and let me tell you, I really hoped they would. On the other hand, some of the best, boldest, and most satisfying listening experiences of the year for me were also some of the most unexpected. In some cases, it was acts I felt were in a creative slump prior to this year, but they came back strong in 2021. For others, it was a feeling of, I knew you were good, but not this good. And mixed in with all those are also a handful of acts that did indeed deliver just the kind of great music I'd hoped they would. We'll begin this year's countdown of my 10 favorite albums with two of those kinds of acts. Acts that, shall we say, met my high expectations. Starting with Stand For Myself by Yola at number 10. This is the sophomore release from this UK country soul singer following her excellent 2019 debut album Walk Through Fire. I rank that album at number 4 on that year's list, and her 2021 album feels very much like a continuation. Teamed once again with Black Keys' Dan Auerbach as producer and co-songwriter, Yola once again delivers a spunky collection of utterly infectious, folksy jams. There's a joyfulness to a lot of these tracks that's in rare supply these days, where even on the sad songs you get a sense that Yola is still having fun just making music. And I have to think that she's earned some level of credibility amongst her peers when you consider that Brandi Carlile, one of the biggest female singer-songwriters around, sings background vocals here. Perhaps she's returning the favor of Yola appearing on Carlile's supergroup album, The Highwomen. If you missed out on Yola before, Stand For Myself is a great place to catch up. Coming in at number 9 is another album that turned out as great as I'd hoped it would, and that's Valentine by Snail Mail. Coincidentally, this is the same slot Snail Mail landed with the 2018 album Lush. It would be easy to say that means Lindsey Jordan is being consistent, but if anything, she's evolving. Where her previous album was rough around the edges in all the best kinds of lo-fi ways, Valentine is certainly a much more polished affair. While not wildly divergent from the sound I loved 3 years earlier, there's a greater sense of confidence, if not sheer rock bravado, on display here that makes this music kick that much harder. I was actually looking forward to seeing Snail Mail live when her 2021 tour got canceled due to Jordan needing surgery on her vocal cords. Yikes. Best wishes on a speedy and successful recovery, and here's hoping I catch you on the road in 2022. One of the most buzzed about bands the past few years is certainly Greta Van Fleet. And while their retro style of guitar rock still has no shortage of naysayers, I think their second full-length album probably converted a lot of skeptics. The Battle at Garden's Gate lands at number 8 on my year-end list, and it's an album I think makes a strong case for the legitimacy of this young band as perhaps the new standard-bearers of the next generation of rock and roll. Time and time again, we see musical trends recycled in popular culture, with sounds of the 80s having been mined ad nauseum in recent years. To me, it's refreshing to hear sounds of what was arguably rock's greatest decade, the 70s, revived in such an unabashedly brazen way. Garden's Gate shows that these guys are indeed the real deal. And when you consider how genres like R&B and rap have dominated the music scene for over a decade now, how can you not find this refreshing? Maybe I spoke too soon about the recycled sounds of the 80s though, because the album in my number 7 slot definitely draws inspiration from that decade. But unlike the 80s new wave and synth pop sounds most acts seem to revisit, John Mayer's sob rock seems to revel in a very different vibe. On paper, a new album of yacht rock songs simply should not work, but somehow Mayer pulls it off. For an artist that seems to fluctuate between being obnoxiously pretentious and not taking themselves seriously at all, here's an album that really seems to hit the sweet spot. There are some who would roll their eyes at the 80s kitsch cover art or the addition of the nice price sticker, but the music itself is surprisingly earnest while also fully self-aware. It's a feel-bad album that makes you feel good when you listen to it, if that makes any sense. And it's okay if it doesn't, because it shouldn't. But take my advice and just go with it. Although Tori Amos is one of my all-time favorite musical artists, I've learned to temper my expectations of her music over the years. I respect that Amos has reached a point where she only makes music for herself, and fans can take it or leave it. To that end, much of her music in the last 10 to 15 years hasn't resonated as strongly with me. But Ocean to Ocean surprised me. We haven't heard songs like this from Tori since her earliest albums back in the 90s. She makes no bones about the fact that this is indeed a COVID album, mostly written and recorded in lockdown, with her band contributing from oceans away, as the title suggests. That very restricted way of working may have been not unlike the beginnings of her career, when she also had less resources available to her and she had to make the best she could with what she had. It worked then, and it works again here. Ocean to Ocean lands at number 6 on my year-end list. Next at number 5, I can't tell you how happy I am to find CHVRCHES with Screen Violence. This Scottish alt-synth trio released 2 of my favorite albums of the past 10 years, with The Bones of What You Believe in 2013 and Every Open Eye in 2015. But 2018's Love Is Dead was a pretty big letdown for me and many other fans as well. With Screen Violence, we get a brilliant return to form. He Said, She Said was the lead single and a song that harkens toward the band's best work in their past, while the exquisitely textured and sublimely moody How Not to Drown hints at a tantalizingly dark future. In all the ways the band felt lost on Love Is Dead, they feel confident and justified on Screen Violence. It's everything I would have hoped for on a CHVRCHES album, plus Robert Smith. How can you not love that? Medicine at Midnight by Foo Fighters is an album that ideally would have found a home on my Best of 2020 list, but the pandemic had other ideas. The band intended to release the album last year and play it out on their 25th anniversary tour. Better late than never, I suppose. The long-delayed album ranks at number 4 for 2021, and it's quite possibly the group's most adventurous and consequently most divisive release ever. Foo Fighters definitely rock out on this album, but they experiment in other genres as well. That may not appeal to everyone, but I found the whole thing pretty refreshing. Dave Grohl described it as a party album, and save for 1 or 2 tracks, I'd say that's pretty accurate. The funny thing is, with everything else Grohl is involved with, it almost feels like this album gets overlooked. I mean, we had the band's induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, a Bee Gees covers EP, and the 2021 edition of Grohl's Hanukkah Sessions. It's easy to forget they had new music this year too. Earlier on the list, I applauded Greta Van Fleet's musical homage to the sounds of the 70s, and now at number 3 on my list, we get another album that seems to take a similar time warp. Daddy's Home by St. Vincent does a remarkable job recreating the gritty, dirty funk sound of that decade with a vibe so seductive and salacious you almost feel like you need a shower after listening. I've generally mixed feelings about producer Jack Antonoff, but I have to give him credit for the sublimely evocative soundscape he's helped craft on this album. Listening to Daddy's Home for the first time was a visceral experience, and if I have anything negative to say about the album, it's that I feel I've gotten too comfortable with it after repeated listens. Still, I don't want that to take away from the fully cohesive pulp audio novella St. Vincent has created here. It's like nothing I've heard in a long time, and definitely one of the most thrilling listens of 2021. Now, if you've been watching my channel for a few years, you know recent output from The Killers hasn't really resonated with me. Last year's Imploding the Mirage was a bit of a mess, as was 2017's Wonderful Wonderful. So going into this year's Pressure Machine, I had, shall we say, low expectations. Little did I know they'd deliver what would turn out to be one of the best albums of the year, let alone of their career. The Killers have long channeled Bruce Springsteen in their music, but usually more in his arena rock mode. Here, the band seems to be paying homage to the River-era Springsteen, with dark stories of the whispered secrets of small-town life. The Killers have always been cinematic in their sound, but never like this. Pressure Machine is the album equivalent of a black and white indie film that is more epic in its character moments than in its settings. The storytelling here is highly personal, yet highly relatable. And of all the lockdown albums I've heard, albums where bands took the time to pause, do things differently, and explore new sounds, this may be the best sonic detour yet. All right, we've just about reached the pinnacle of this year's list, so before I reveal my pick for the top spot, let's recap. At number 10 is UK country soul singer Yola with Stand For Myself. At number 9, we received Valentine via Snail Mail. Retro rockers Greta Van Fleet and The Battle at Garden's Gate is number 8, followed by John Mayer's Sob Rock at number 7. One of my personal favorite artists, Tori Amos, holds the number 6 slot with Ocean to Ocean. CHVRCHES had a tremendous return to form in 2021, landing Screen Violence at the number 5 spot on my list. Then there's new Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductees Foo Fighters with Medicine at Midnight at number 4. Number 3 is St. Vincent, Daddy's Home. And at number 2 is Pressure Machine by The Killers. Finally, the album that holds the number 1 spot on my list of the best albums of 2021 is If I Can't Have Love, I Want Power by Halsey. Here's an artist that I'd all but given up on a year ago. I was a huge fan of Badlands, her 2015 debut. And while 2017's Hopeless Fountain Kingdom didn't rank in my top 10 that year, I still featured it as an honorable mention. But with 2020's Manic, Halsey seemed determined to steer her musical career into a more urban/hip-hop direction than I cared to follow. It seemed to serve her well in terms of chart success, but it saddened me to say that the music was no longer something that appealed to my tastes. So this year, when the singer announced her new album was being produced by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross of Nine Inch Nails, I was more than taken aback. Reznor and Ross are certainly musical chameleons, considering their wildly successful side jobs as Oscar-winning film scorers, but I couldn't see how they could be a good match for Halsey's manic sound. Turns out that wasn't the sound she wanted for her new album at all, and consequently, it's quite unlike anything she's released before. If I Can't Have Love, I Want Power was conceived, no pun intended, as a concept album about pregnancy and childbirth. The song cycle she's crafted here represents one of the most personal and confessional you're likely to hear, and the companion film released as a sort of long-form music video is a shockingly bold statement as well. On this album, Halsey makes it clear she's not trying to make pop music, she's trying to make art. She succeeds brilliantly. So there you have it, my top 10 albums of 2021. It has been another crazy year for sure, but at least we've gotten some pretty great music out of it. But now it's your turn. What are your favorite albums of 2021? What were the albums that surprised you the most? Which ones were overrated? And which ones that you were looking forward to ended up letting you down? Let me know what you think down in the comments section below. Once again, my name is Kyle, and this has been Track by Track. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, plus check out some of these other videos below that I think you might also enjoy. And of course, be sure to subscribe, because true music fans always want new releases the day they come out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.